Oh, hello there, Outliers. Niiamah Ashong here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey here today. We have an incredible opportunity to spend some time with some extraordinary outliers here as they continue to up level themselves and share how they stay true to themselves as they do it along the way. This is the Outliers Edge podcast, specifically the Outliers Edge Roundtable, and I'm really excited for us to dive into it here. Let's give you a chance to get to know the outliers who've joined us for today. Um, why don't we start with you, Kate? Kate, would you mind letting us know more about you and the game you're currently playing?
Sure. Hi, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panels as well. My name is Kate Strong. The game I'm playing, what a great question to start with, is to impact the world, leave the world a little bit better, make sure that every day I turn up and contribute positively to a more equitable, a cleaner and safer environment for all. How I'm doing that is through writing books, as a coach and consultant, and I'm also organising a mass participation world record attempt later this year to get people who aren't usually involved through action to come along and do something that's outside their comfort zone.
See, Kate, I love this here. That we're like we just started out here, and you're like we're going for like world records. This is the space in which we play, and it's just a Monday, y'all. When we're recording this, it's just a Monday. Kate, glad that you're here. Thank you for choosing to play a game at the level that you do, and to continue to build from there. I cannot wait to get into more about how you are approaching things and thinking about things as well. Awesome. You all, like, let's get to know you here. Would you mind letting us know more about you and the game you're playing?
Sure. Love that it's the game I'm playing because I'm literally an athlete myself. So I'm involved in a number of things, but the key game I play really is in sports, and I've been involved in teaching children for over 6 years, from a church basis, and then taken into the business world where I run a football academy for kids, where we mentor them in Christian values and character development, and then we merge that with football as well, because I've always been of the notion that talent gets you far, but it's character that keeps you there, and that's a very key factor in life. On top of that, I do life coaching one-on-one sessions as well, because my ultimate goal is I believe each and every human being has been brought on earth for a purpose to better the earth and impact it in a positive way. And so I'm just doing my part called to walk my purpose, walk my life in God, and ensure that when I leave the earth, I can be like, yeah, man, I lived my life. I didn't waste it. Yeah, that's the summary of it, but pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, well, I appreciate that there. And like, I thank you for the work that you do. I get excited to see how we continue to build off this as we go along here. Glad to have you here, you all. Jacob,
Sure.
let's get to know you here. Share with us here about you and the game you play.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say thank you to the other panels for, saying what you need to say and doing everything that you're doing to change the world to make it positive. And then I want to thank you for inviting me on this wonderful podcast. I read up on it and immediately wanted to be involved. As for me, the game I'm playing is kind of similar to Kate's. My ultimate goal is to make the world a better place, especially the generation that I'm growing up in. I've kind of noticed the steering away of activism and kind of making your name, known. And so I'm trying to do that in every possible way I can. I started a nonprofit. I wrote a book. I am currently motivational speaking and would like to elevate that to the next level as well.
All right. Well, like Jacob, I'm glad you're here, and I enjoy spending time with you all here because what I get about you is that you're multidimensional, right? Jacob, just using what you just said here as an example, you're like, yeah, like you wrote a book, you have a nonprofit, like you're speaking, and we were talking earlier about like you have a podcast. It's like like to this, like each of you have more to you than just the one level. And as we get into this conversation, I'm really curious about like I think I'm really curious about how you all think about like almost like yeah, how do you think about how do you like organize in your head all the various things that you're getting done such that it can feel like aligned and like and building toward itself as opposed to like a whole bunch of random projects. Kate, I'm gonna start with you because like you brought in like the world record attempt in there. I'm like, yeah, that could be like a one-off thing, or it could be like really, really aligned with the impact you're creating. So I'm curious about how you're doing it, and then I'll just toss it off to each of you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I've got to be honest, too many projects on the go at the moment, and I'm struggling because there is so much. Because we see, I'm sure you got the other guys feel the same, that when you start one project, you see another opening or another opportunity or another community, and you say yes before you find out that you've committed to 8 days a week, not just your usual 6 or 7. But how I imagine it is eventually they're all moving the dial. So the one question I ask myself is, does this move the dial? And if the answer is no, then I've started to say no or not yet to certain things. So it's about being more disciplined to knowing what is my North Star and making sure that everything I do is aligned towards that. And it does sometimes mean to have to say no or delegate. So yeah, I'm noticing more and more of my patterns are coming together into that similar pattern.
Yeah, I'm feeling you on that. You talked about like, is it moving the dial? Like, how do you know for yourself what's a dial mover? I'm curious about like some of the criteria or some of the ways that you're able to determine this, because I'm thinking about outliers out there that are like, I'll say like, what's moving the needle for you? And some of them don't know what actually makes a difference versus is just work.
Yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge, like, I've got sort of 3 elements. One is, does it light me up? Do I actually enjoy this, or am I doing it for some type of energy, altruistic, I feel I have to feeling? The second is it viable both for the environment as well as financially for myself? And the third is, how does it impact other people? Because I think sometimes we get stuck on the first 2, and it's important to remember that we're here for a community level. Like, I can't live alone. So at some level, my actions need to start serving other groups and other members, albeit indirectly where I buy my clothes. But yeah, everything I do is, how does it light me up? How does it work financially to make sure it can last forever? And how many other people are impacted in that level?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like, one of the things I told you all about, like my mission right now, and it's like one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it. Is I'm like, there's a lot of people who have a lot of impact to make out in the world, but they haven't thought about how do they sustain it financially so it can continue going. You know, and so you gave us here just 3. I actually really appreciate this, Kate, because I came out, I was like, what does moving the dial mean to you? And you're like, I know exactly what it means. I have these 3 questions here, and so outliers, I'm going to invite you here to think about it for yourself. When you're saying I want to level up or I want to move the needle or focus on the things that are important, what are your criteria behind it? It doesn't have to be Kate's, but I'm really curious, if you were asked that question, how would you determine or respond to that and say like, these are the ways that I'm thinking about it, you know? Thanks, Kate. Thanks for getting us going here. Let me just open up the conversation. I realize like I could go and ask each of you directly, but let me just have you unmute yourselves here. The question on the table here is like, you have a lot going on here. You how do you keep yourself in alignment and continue to grow from there?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question and topic to open up with, because I'm kind of known for, like, I've noticed myself and other people have told me as well that I kind of spread myself too thin. And I actually attended a 7-figure speaker conference back in 2023 in Atlanta, and they kind of talked about this, and it's all about balance. And so and they also, I want to say this first, they also talk about making sure that you're giving your 100% to everything that you're doing. And that's why I kind of talked about my podcast earlier, and how I'm kind of putting off because I want to make sure that I put 100% to it. So when I'm like doing my nonprofit, writing a book, and doing, I also have a basketball brand, and I'm doing like all these things at once. I try to focus one week on one thing and then do the next week on one thing, so I'm still able to progress for each thing that I'm doing, while not focusing on too many things all at once, but focusing on one thing, like my nonprofit, for one week, whether it's going to 5 businesses a day to get sponsors. And then the next week I'll focus on monetizing my book and calling, businesses, schools, restaurants to do book signings. The next week I'll focus on monetizing my basketball brand, and I kind of repeat that process throughout the year until I just kind of further that progress for each one, so I don't overload myself like all at once each day, but I kind of take a specific amount of time for each one and progress from there.
It's awesome. Joel, what's coming to you?
Um, First of all, I love something that Jacob said about giving your all. And for me, that's big because like when you send me your email, by the way, thank you for having me on this podcast. Absolutely honored to be here. But when you sent me that email the first time and you talked about how you came across my podcast, my first thought was, hey, that podcast that I haven't touched in almost 2 years. Okay, I wonder what gems he found in there. Quite humbling, honestly speaking. But like Jake, I started the podcast. First time I think was in 2021. Then I stopped. Then 2022 I resumed. But then I stopped in 2022 because I wasn't giving it my all. There was a lot I was juggling at the same time. And I said, if I'm going to be putting out episodes at this point, it's just going to be for the sake of putting out episodes. And that's not what it's about. Because my podcast is called, or is still called, Conversations with UL. So my conversations have to be genuine. They have to be deep. They have to hold, like basically be able to hold water in a basin, and not be like a colander where it's water being poured and it's just going through. So I chose to hold back, and I do intend to come back to it in the future. But that's basically when in my life I able to accommodate it the way I desire to do so, if that makes sense. But then to now fully answer your question, for me, basically how I find a way of handling the different demands when um, basically having these projects I've started up, like you've highlighted, the key thing for me or key compass for me is it within the purpose God's given me in my life. So I'm a faith-based man. My name actually means the will of God. And when I discovered that, life-changing for me, everything I've done is within that train track, so to speak. And so one thing I've always known from a young age is I'd always be like, I want to give people love, like I want them to experience love in the world. I want them to know they're valued. That's very key. And as a young teenager, first it came out as me saying or calling people, hey, how are you doing today, love? Things like that. Oh, you look good, love, and stuff like that. And I know you're always like, oh, okay, that's cool. In this part of the world, you say that somebody's falling for you. And so I learned very quickly it was the wrong approach. And I had to re-strategize. But even with starting up the business that I then started up, my passion has been to empower and help people be the best version of themselves using principles I've learned from the Bible. And so they may not be Christian, but there's still principles I could apply using the different tools I have in their life without actually going and saying, like, go read the Bible. It's just like, oh, here's this principle on timekeeping. Here's this principle on being punctual. Here's this principle on being trustworthy and the like. And so it's like, equipping and building up people, whether it's kids, whether it's teenagers, whether it's adults, to be the best version they are meant to be. And it's a step at a time. And so a lot of what I've done again is really just been like a whole step of faith. Because even like the whole business, one thing I said when I was young was, I never want to be an entrepreneur. I saw my mom being an entrepreneur, and I was just like, yo, the stress is insane. I mean, yeah, she pulled it off, but the stress is insane. And I said, far be it from me. And, now look at where I am. Here I am doing the very same thing. And I'm just like, it's mad. So it's like, it's a lot of stress, but it's prioritizing what's needed. And like Kate said, like there's so many other things you see coming up, like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. Everything just seems to be flowing down like rain. But then again, it's like, yeah, everything's flowing down like rain, but we're
Yeah.
going to focus your water to flow down at the end of the day.
So I like this element of like where to get things to flow. I feel you. There's a couple of things you said in there that got me thinking, and I was really piqued my curiosity in the way that I want to bring out to you all here. You talked about um, when you were young, you'd be like, you would just like throw the word love in, like, hey, what's going on, love? And I actually really love that component of it. I think how do I say it? There's two things. One of them, I think that when you're trying to change the world or impact the world here, you're going to run into resistance. And so I
Mm.
love that part there where I'm like, you figured out from a very early age, like like something that was already impactful enough that it immediately ran into resistance. And so like I want to just give props to you, like and just your inner knowing at that point. And
Thanks.
yeah, I see that, and I also really love like the identity that's there, right? Like you're bringing it out. I want to play on this element of like the youngness, the elements of us being, you know, let me pull it out this way. I'm really curious about something that you've been doing basically for your whole life. Maybe people haven't like they wouldn't know it, but like you've actually gained mastery over it because you're like, this is something that like most people think that I couldn't not do it if I tried. And I'd be curious about how that one thing you've been doing has leveled itself up over time. I used to be a class clown, and that was all about me distracting people's thoughts a certain ways. And now I'm a coach. Now I do this through like there's many different ways I've kept up leveling and distracting people from what they were thinking to help them get to some new place here. So I'm curious for you all, what's something you've been doing basically your whole life that underlines everything you do? Anyone have a response to that?
Um, Curiously, I'm sure this is a sort of defense mechanism, but I've been trying to fit in, which has not worked. I'm not sure if any other outlier feels that, but
That's kind of it's like a huge part of it, right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean,
tell me about your thing. I like honestly, I used to like my thing was about fitting out, right? So I knew I couldn't fit in, so I would fit out. And now I'm working on belonging. I'm curious about how the fitting in has worked out for you
yeah, I mean, curiously, I've come to belonging and contributing, so from the different angle, but mine was don't be seen. Like being seen is a dangerous place to be. You get bullied, you get called out, you know, that bad things happen to people who stick their neck out and stand for something that isn't the norm. Like stay hidden. But it's impossible if it's in our hearts, like what Yuval was saying, what Jacob is, demonstrating as well, what you do as well. It's impossible to fit in. It's impossible to not be true to ourselves because that disconnect arrives. And that's what happened to me. I was disconnected from myself, that I was trying so hard to be the Kate that I thought society wanted. The real Kate was slowly dying inside. And it took for me quite a shock where and my partner left me 6 days before our wedding. But that was the break I needed to go, boom, this was never the life I signed up for. Why on earth was I walking down this forever aisle, quite literally? I need to start owning my voice and owning my choice. And people will resist whether I'm me or not me. So let's just be me and enjoy it and start being proud of my actions. So that's when I started to, and then the lone wolf came out, and eventually we can't live alone. We live in a community. How can I belong and contribute as the outlier within rather than the lone wolf without?
I hear you talk about the lone wolf, and I want to just like dive into this just a bit more, because when you said it, I'm like, oh, I think I wonder if I'm in that stage right now. And B, I'm like, I think if I go back and I think about my patterns over time, like the lone wolf like ends up being a stage that happens where it's like, I want you to want me as I am. Okay, well, I'm gonna do it on my own, and I'm just gonna go do it, and like screw everything else around me, and it's like I'm just gonna take it all on. And then if I'm hearing there's also like another transition, it's like, oh, actually, wait, hold on, we don't do this thing alone. Can you speak a little bit to that? I'm really curious about that, Kate.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, because I use sport as a sort of healing and self-discovery tool, because we can lose ourselves in our mind and convince ourselves we're doing the work with all this navel gazing and personal development. But sport, if you don't do the training, you don't get the results. It's a very simple litmus test. So I use activity to make sure I'm true to the personal development work I'm doing and complementary to it. I just took up sport. I took up triathlon. I started to honor my word. I started to bring in the competition in myself to be my best. And there was an element of training alone and comparing my results to others. I did get quite high up in that sport. I was age group world champion, a national champion for a couple of years for Australia as well. But it can only last so long because we build that pedestal by ourselves. And then when we're having a bad day, who do we turn to? Because my mind had perceived the world as a competition rather than a collaboration. So that's why I sort of stepped away from competitive sport into more collaborative events. They still push me physically, but bring a team together, bring community, bring a safety net, bring a space where failure is successful and rewarded rather than only seen as winning at all costs. That's the sort of community I'm striving to build and growing. But it took that pedestal and that fall to unfortunately learn it the hard way. But we survive, we get back up, and we just make sure we don't repeat what we didn't enjoy in the past.
Okay, thanks for letting us see you, honestly, here. Jacob, I'm curious what's flowing for you in this conversation now. What's something that you like to bring in?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I've had throughout my whole life, there's two things that comes to mind. The first one would be kind of what Kate was kind of referencing is the competitiveness. And so I was a four sport athlete pretty much growing up my whole life. And I I had to learn myself and from others as well that told me that I needed to learn kind of how to harness and kind of control that competitiveness so it doesn't affect others in a negative way. So what I've kind of used that competitiveness in my not necessarily careers, but the things that I'm doing, I've harnessed that to kind of move, um, like I guess what we were talking about earlier, move the needle. And so I've used that competitiveness not towards other people, but towards myself. And how can I be better than the day before? How can I create the best nonprofit possible? And I'm not there yet, and I can recognize that, and that I use that competitiveness to want to be better and to want to have my nonprofit affect as many people as possible in a positive way, as well as my book. How can I make it the best like book possible that I can make it, not necessarily compared to other people's books, because other people's books are going to have their own, amazing features that are going to impact people in a positive way, but how can I make my book the best that I can make it? And so I kind of use that competitiveness that I've dragged along throughout my whole life, but kind of changing it in certain ways and altering it in my brain so it doesn't impact people in a negative way, and I'm not overusing it. The second thing that comes to mind would be sitting still. And I mean that in a literal way and a metaphorical way. So growing up, I just could never sit still. I just always wanted to move, do something. And that played a part in why I'm, doing everything that I possibly can, like I said, to make the world a better place, whether it's through my book, motivational speaking, progressing my nonprofit. And so I meant that that's the physical way. And in the metaphorical way, I could never just sit still to just watch something happen. And I mean that in a negative way, like watching a negative thing happen. So whether I saw bullies, in school back in, elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever it was, or in the like adult world that I'm now coming into, in terms of, watching people do things on social media or just doing just negative things in general. I can never just sit still. So I've kind of changed that, not changed that, but I've kind of created that kind of metaphor for myself to be able to create a positive impact in the world as well, to not just sit still, but to act on things and to ultimately create that positive manner in the everyday life.
All right. Yeah, awesome. To answer your original question would be quite hard for me, Niiamah, because I feel like mine is kind of like it was like a light switch in my life. So for the first 18 years of my life, I always say this because it was a big struggle in the sense that I grew up an approval addict, and for majority of my school life, from like primary into high school, even I did A levels, I was verbally bullied. So I grew up been having low self-esteem and confidence. I believed I was ugly, like genuinely believed I was ugly. Like if you ever got like Quasimodo from Notre Dame, that was me. That's what I believed. Um, and so anything negative I believed was me, to the point whereby even if I did something right, even if I knew it was right, I would second guess it, and I needed somebody else's approval, because that's how I grew up in the spaces I was in the schools I went to. So having found my identity, like this is when I knew, oh, my name means will of God, finding my identity in Christ, and like developing that growth, that identity helped free me a lot. And it was a literal personality switch because I grew up timid, shy, reserved. And when I knew who I really was and I gained that confidence, um, people that see me now, that saw me then, think I'm a different person because they're like, why are you extroverted? Why are you loud? Um, Kate was speaking about like how she grew up believing that if you stick your neck out, you get in trouble and whatnot. I'm that guy that's gonna stick my neck out. Like you should see me and you should hear me. Like when I walk in the room, not because you see me, but that's because of my voice. I'm a very loud person. Even when I laugh like a donkey. But yeah, nonetheless, you know I'm in the room, but it's this level of confidence that has grown over, in discovering my identity. And so it's helped me do a lot of the things. Like I had mad stage fright and I couldn't get on a stage and speak to people. And I grew in that talent in developing it. And here I was speaking for the first time to over 3,000 people, first time on a stage where I wasn't with a mic shivering, when just about 2 weeks prior, it was just in front of like 20 young adults and it was shivering. But then it's like that development because of understanding my character, understanding my identity, and even taking risks like doing the podcast, because I was just like, podcast, people gonna listen to you. And the thoughts that be in my head then is, what do I have to offer them? Because the world puts a lot of thoughts and ideas into our minds from the time we're young growing up, and a lot of it could be negative and is negative. And it takes a lot of work to then uproot those thoughts because they are like a seed. They grow over time and bear fruit. And to sort of uproot it and plant something new, it takes a lot of intentionality and it takes a lot of commitment to it when you're doing such a thing. So that's something I had to do. So for me, it's basically anyone that knew me from the time I was 18 or younger to see me now would be shocked by the different things I'm doing, because it's a lot of being out talking to people in public, being out there and being seen and not shying away from the limelight in a sense. And something that's helped me as I've grown is to not then compare myself to other. Comparison is the killer of all joy. That's something I've heavily learned. And this really dawned on me when I was like 20 and I was like, ish, my friends are like in uni and whatnot. And here I am, I dropped out of A levels because it wasn't working for me. What am I doing with my life, And I look at, and there's when I realized and dawned on me like, oh, wait, we've all got individual maps in our lives. Yes, we may start in the same family, we may be twins, born on the same day, but our paths won't always be on the same line. At points, they'll separate, at times, they'll converge. And so when we meet people in our lives, even like right now, our paths on our different maps have converged at this point in time. We don't know how long we'll walk the same path, but at a point, they will separate again. And even when we die, it's on wherever it's intended at the end of the map. And that's how I see life. So it helps me not then jump into that aspect of comparison, and helps me understand as I'm journeying, as long as I'm intentional, I'll get to where I need to be. And failure is not a terrible thing. Failure is part of learning. That's something I've had to accept in the recent years and understand, because I grew up with the mindset failure is bad, but that's not the truth. Failure is just another tool in which you learn. It's eventually what leads you to success. So that's how I would answer your question best.
Well, I appreciate this here. Like, there's a couple different things here. What you're gonna find is I'm gonna let y'all just kind of open up here and just go off for a little bit. A few things have been showing up for me as we had this conversation. Well, just so you know, in particular, you talked about like I appreciate how you own who you are right now. And I feel that amongst all of you here. Like you're like, but this is who I am now, y'all. Like this is just it. This is what you get. This is who I am. You talked about being loud, and I have a premise here where I hide nothing and hold nothing back. And that one in particular got me because I have a of young children, and I recognize, I'm like, oh man, I constantly talk about one of them being really loud. I'm like, but this is amazing at it. Like it's amazing, just like not right next to me all the time, but it's like such a cool thing that like that's out there. And so as you're talking, I gotta let you know, I have the feels inside because as a parent, just thinking about some of the things that even being aware. I might still be doing. It hits me. So just thanks. Just know that. I think that there's something here about being seen that keeps showing up. Kate, you brought it in earlier as well. Uh, and I want to bring that into the context of some of the amazing things that we're working toward right now. You know, Kate, you talked about like working toward the record breaking project here, if you don't mind, I'd love to have each of us talk about some of the things that we're doing right now. That's that excites us, but at the same time might actually scare us. Kate, this may not be that world breaking thing, by the way. Like I get the sense that like for you, you're like, I could do that, so I'm gonna, but would you mind talking about your experiences? It could be yours. Like, how are you all navigating this? as you continue to level yourself up? Because it seems like what used to be the big thing is no longer the big thing. There's now a new big thing. And how are y'all navigating it? Kate, I get curious. You mind starting us off on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. I mean, it's funny because we don't ever get, well, I'm going to say it universally, I'm going to say nervous. All of us still get very nervous. All of us still get afraid. All of us still hesitate and stall. And it just shows it up in different ways, as you said, Niiamah. So, yeah, the world record, this is not my first world record. So this is my fourth attempt. It's my first mass participation. It's also, I've also stepped into a supporting role. So I've helped support a lady run the length of Ireland and break that in a world record of 3.5 days, over 400 plus miles. And she's doing I'm doing another supporting role, being behind the scenes for her to run 48 hours. So curiously, I'm very happy. And my comfort zone is supporting very pointy fear factor records to take place. My uncomfortable space now is my own, building my own network and my own sort of foundations and putting me on the map as a speaker, as an author, and start flying the Kate Strong flag, because that is unsustainable if I keep giving and forgetting to receive. So the world record is called Taff Tidy. So I'm engaging the most amount of people to clean up a river on one day. Which is relatively simple for numbers, but I want to make sure that the whole communities are engaged. So yes, the schools are coming along. Yes, the type A people that look like us on the call, who turn up proactively and say yes, are going to be there. But I'm reaching out to the queer, brown communities. I'm reaching out to the asylum seekers and refugees. I'm reaching out to the mental health charities, to the retirement homes. I would like to see the whole of society represented in an authentic way, to say, this is normal, this is us, this is our community, not just the people that look like us and sound like us and do like us. Like making sure that we have the introverts, the extroverts, the less able, the more active, whatever that difference may be, and bring us all together. So my challenge, if you want, is to make sure I can do that authentically, to demonstrate what true allyship is, and bring their voice into a space where they feel comfortable to be seen and heard. So it's exciting, it's nerve-wracking. I'm challenging myself as a sort of I'm doing a lot of work on what does it mean to be a white ally? Because I carry some guilt around my privilege, and that doesn't help the world, just to call it as it is. So how can I be a better person with what I have for the world, to make sure I'm doing what I can with what I've got?
So yeah, Jake, I'm going to come in. I wanted to say something here, Jacob. Sorry, I'm going to be muted for a bit, so I'm going to let y'all just keep talking here. But Kate, the reason I'm calling here is that if you're watching the video, there was this really wonderful moment afterwards where Kate, you said something, and then there was this silence for a little bit, right? And if you're listening to this, maybe you may not have seen that. Do you mind, Kate, if I ask you? Because what was going on for you after you finished that? I saw a couple of things happening physically. I'm really curious what's going on for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal, I suppose, for me, to call out my white privilege, especially in a very big public space, because I do work hard. I've worked hard to grow my business. I've worked hard at the records I earn and what I've done. It doesn't diminish what I've done, but there is an unconscious bias that also gives me a little nudge here and there. Yes, I'm a woman. There are certain things that hold me back for my gender, but majoritatively, I tick the "you're accepted in this space" box. To call it out publicly it does put butterflies in my tummy, because I don't want people to think that I'm leaning on the "oh, please help me" victim mindset, nor am I swooping in as the savior. So yeah, it's a bit nerve-wracking to call out publicly something that I don't experience on a day-to-day basis. And I'm stepping in clunkily as an ally, and to make sure I am a better voice for people who aren't heard more consistently.
Thank you for that, Kate. Outliers, part of the reason I wanted to bring this in here is that element of stepping in clunkily. All right. Kate, you talk about being seen. We brought this up here. This is the game, Outliers. This is it. Kate had a choice to make. She could have not brought this up. She could have thought it and let it go. But instead she in real time said, now, how does my allyship look like now? Like how much can I be seen now? Right. And this is what like we can write all we want, we can journal about it, we can repost and like and all this stuff, but it's like in real moments where we get a chance to really show up and say, like, this is who we are. This is how, like, Kate, like, just so you know, as you were talking and really bringing it up, I was like, oh, I get Kate. Like, she's my peeps, you know, she's my peeps there. And like, and there was something really real in that. And so thank you. And then thank you for also just being honest about what was going on with you inside. Thanks for trusting me enough to answer that question honestly here. Because part of the reason I do this and the reason I look for outliers and everything is I'm like, most of the time we see what other people look like on the outside and we compare that to how we feel on the inside, right? So you were just talking about, like, I've done this is my fourth record that I'm going to break, right? But at the same time, you're human, you're real, you're just an ordinary person doing your stuff, playing at a very high level, but like also going through it. I'm gonna make sure outliers as we continue to have this conversation, as we go, like, this is what this whole thing is all about. So this whole thing's about. So Kate, just thanks for being real. Thanks for bringing it in here. Anything else you want to say before I open up to everyone else?
No, I just really appreciate you acknowledging that and me being able to show the workings out. Because again, we've sometimes look up to individuals, especially the ones on this call, as the done deal that we've got everything sorted. And we're still learning. Every day is a learning day. Every day is a place where we have to choose to up level, as you said, and be outside our comfort zone. So this is where I'm sort of, as I said, clunkily learning and growing. So I appreciate the feedback, and I'm going to hopefully do better the next time as well.
Yeah. Thanks for playing the game you do. You all, Jacob. I'm just gonna open it up here. Anything y'all want to say? Anything that's coming to you all?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say, Kate, that's amazing that you're going for that specific world record because there's really anything that you can do and you're choosing to do that. So I think that's admirable. And I also like to touch on what you said actually just now about the clunkily learning. I think that is something that I definitely can kind of teach myself that because I am harder on myself than anybody else is. So sometimes I just need to kind of recognize to myself that it's okay, if you don't learn it right away or whatever it is, but everything's not going to be smooth, but just kind of learn eventually, you're going to be able to do what you'd like to do. And then to touch on what you all said actually earlier about caring what others think and kind of comparing yourself to others. I will say, because I didn't mention it earlier, that was absolutely my number one problem growing up. And well, I guess not necessarily problem, but something that was holding me back. And so, whatever I wanted to do, for example, basketball was my number one sport. My mind 24/7 while I was on the court playing, against another team, against another player, or just in the streets, everyday life playing. That was the number one thing I would think about every single time. And I started to realize that it was literally hindering my ability to move forward or my ability to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And so I kind of had to ask myself, you know, you didn't make it this far to make it this far. So I'm not attempting to do what I want to do and only making it that far just because I'm worried about what other, people might think or worried about what the guys are comparing myself to others. And so to go based off of your questions, Niiamah, so something that I'm doing specifically that I love, but I still contain that fear about moving forward would be motivational speaking. And so the current fear that I'm facing with that is yes, excuse me, I just held a speech. It was my biggest speech yet for 500 health professionals at the University of New Hampshire. It was my biggest paid speaking gig. It was for the most amount of people that I've had so far. So I am progressing there. However, it is an everyday process that I am reaching out to schools, teams, businesses. I've reached out to probably, I would say, a rough estimate of over 200 by now. And I've only had three paid speaking gigs in the last 2 years. So right now, my biggest fear, or in another term, my biggest challenge would be to being able to, book those gigs and being able to move forward with those speaking gigs. So I am able to, spread my message and change the lives of as many people as I can.
I love this here. Thank you, Jacob. At a certain point, I just started like smiling, and the smile came from me when there's been an ongoing theme here about all of you are out there reaching out. No one's waiting for things to come their way. Like you're reaching out. Okay, you brought in a number of different. You're like, yeah, this is the low hanging fruit that most other people would be like thumbs up. But I'm reaching out beyond that. How do we go in? Jacob, you said, I can, like let me acknowledge you on the largest audience and the largest paid opportunity you've had to date. That's like let me see you there. What made me smile was I was like, oh, so all you're saying is that you only have to make 200 reach outs to get three paid gigs. Awesome. So I'm like, so that's great there. So it's like, all right, for every 1,000 reach outs, you get, what is that? 15 paid gigs. Like, cool. Like, got you. Let's go do that work. Was like the first thing that came to my mind. And then the other part of it being that I'm like, I love this because the more that we do the work, the better. Okay, I think you talked about like the activities that were in there. Like the more that we actually reach out, we do these work here, the better we get at it, and like that number starts to change over time. I'm bringing this in here about the outreach part because outliers. I want to just kind of just bring in like just put that into focus. Like if you're sitting there and waiting and wondering and questioning, like should I? Who would want this? All this stuff. Like one thing you have at your disposal is everyone else. Like this, it's not too hard to actually get in touch with someone should you choose to reach out. I'm saying this from someone who just figured this out like 6 months ago. I'm like, oh, like you could like honestly just get in touch. So I want to put that out there for you all as you're navigating and you're thinking about things like stay stay in stay in ownership, stay in leadership of yourself and create the opportunity that way. So yeah, we've come to the end of our time. What I want to do here is actually speak directly to outliers, and I'm going to have you each share a way that they can continue down the journey with you. So outliers, one of the things that we do here is that we would love for you to share this episode out with your entire network. But underneath that, and that's a legitimate ask. So if you can, please go ahead and share it. But underneath that, we have a stronger ask that like sits more to like the core of us here, which is what we call the one person, one conversation at a time initiative. And that's my ask you is to think about one person after listening to this conversation that you think would benefit from also listening to this. So I like to even think not just listening passively, but actively participating in it. All right. And my ask is, can you share this conversation with them as a gift to them, to let them know that they belong, to let them know that you see them, and pass this conversation on to them? Yes, you can do the larger platforms, but I think there's something, I think underneath all this, like this is where the movement lives. This is where like the real impact comes with just one conversation being shared with one person at a time and letting people know that we see you. And this conversation that Kate and Yuel and Jacob were having actually speaks to what you are thinking about or what's deeper inside of you. All right. So that's my ask of you. Y'all, we've come to the end here, and what I'd like to do is give outliers a chance to go deeper down the journey with you. And the way that we do this here is, if you can share with us the best contact info for you, as well as, and like that might be like social media or whatever it is, right? So use the word contact info. I don't know, it seems kind of outdated nowadays, but the best way for people to get to continue down the journey with you. And then we also share an insight that we got from this conversation. This is something that you're taking away from this conversation. And if you came to the point and you're like, there's nothing that like I didn't really get an insight from this, just go ahead and share that. That's fine too. All right. But we'll use that to help wrap us up for today. So why don't we do this here? We'll start with UL and then we'll go to Jacob and then we'll have Kate bring us home. So UL, do you mind sharing with us an insight you got from today and the best way people can go down the journey with you?
All right, great. Insight I got from today. Two things. Just listening to Kate and Jacob speak, as well as you, Niiamah, is growth, grit, perseverance. I think that's something that's resounded in this conversation today and definitely taken home for me. And I feel like when I go to sleep tonight, because it's evening here, it's going 10 p.m. I'm going to be a blessed man waking up tomorrow ready to take the world on, because what you guys have shared with me is like golden. And I can't wait for this to be out there so I can come and re-listen to it again and just take down more notes. But Kate, Jacob, great blessing. Really appreciate what you shared, as well as you, Niiamah. Yeah. And how people can get in touch with me. You can reach me through email. That's uelkabwe@gmail.com. That is uelkabwe@gmail.com. And on Instagram, it's Man of Steel ZA. That's it, Man of Steel ZA. Man of Steel because UL, House of L, Kyle, House of L. It's easier for people to remember my name that way, pretty much. And also on LinkedIn, UL Kabwe, U apostrophe EL Kabwe, Kabwe. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, he's connected, Outlier. So like, if you want to get in touch, it's possible. Make it happen, right? Jacob, let's come to you. What's an insight you got from today, if any, and how can Outliers get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So one, I got a lot of insights today, but one that I would say sticks out would be that we all have our own map and we all are on our own path. I believe you all said that. And I think that is absolutely incredible to kind of share with everyone, and that it's okay that, we have that alone sense, because that alone sense is what allows us to do things that we want to do and not do things based off of what others want us to do. So I think that was absolutely incredible and something I am definitely going to live by. And how people can reach me or contact me would be through a bunch of different ways. I would say the main two ways would be Instagram, which is I am_Jacob Tatum, and that's TATOM. And then my other contact info would be my email, which is tatumjacob@gmail.com. And I would say those are the best ways to contact me. And I just want to say thank you all for sharing and allowing me to have these insights and move forward as a better person because of it.
Thank you, Jacob. Kate, mind bringing us home and insight you got and how we can best continue down with you?
Yeah, sure. It's been an absolute delight and hugely inspiring. It's 8 p.m. here, and I'm like, I'm going to start motivating and doing some work. I was winding down, now I'm winding up. But I'm going to leave with a quote that Jacob said with a little bolt on, which is, and I wrote it down, it was so good. You didn't make it this far to make it this far. And we can go so much further together as well. So what you are building here, Niiamah, is amazing because you're building a community and that will take us beyond our imagination. So thank you so much. And I would love to keep in touch. I've got your guys' Gmails. I'll be sending you an email. But the easiest thing is go on my website. It's katestrong.global. And my email is kate@katestrong.global. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. Thanks for bringing your time, your expertise, and your experience in this conversation. The expertise of living your life is what I would say here. Y'all are amazing. Keep playing the game that you do. And until the next time we talk, Outliers, remember this: be you on purpose. Journey on.